Our brain is made up of billions of neurons. Have you ever wondered how these neurons actually remember everything you read? Unlike a memory card, the brain doesn't just store data, it analyzes it, compares it with previously stored information, and keeps only what's important for survival. Memory is actually far more complex and fascinating than you might imagine. Let's first understand what memory actually is in the brain. Our brain contains about 90 billion neurons. These neurons communicate with each other through trillions of connections called synapses. Memory is basically a pattern of these synaptic connections, each arranged in a unique way. When you remember something, it means your brain has formed new synaptic connections. That's it. Let me explain this in more detail. Everything in the brain ultimately comes down to action potentials. Let's say you see an apple. When light from the apple hits your retina, it generates action potentials that travel through the optic nerve to your brain. Inside the brain, these action potentials activate a specific group of neurons in a unique pattern. That pattern becomes the blueprint of the apple in your brain. It's what tells you that you're seeing an apple. If you see an orange instead, a different pattern of neurons fires. A different blueprint. For easier understanding, imagine we have only 10 neurons. When you first see an apple, the first, third, and sixth neurons fire together. This forms the blueprint for apple. If you keep seeing that apple every day, these same neurons keep firing together, and their connections grow stronger. Eventually, your brain strongly associates that pattern, those 3 neurons firing, with the idea of an apple. When you see an orange, a different set of neurons fire, say the 2nd, 7th, and 8th. For a dog or a cat, it's yet another set of neurons. Our brain perceives the world in far greater detail than we consciously realize. When we eat food, we just enjoy its taste, but the brain registers that taste as a memory. Similarly, smells, touch, images, and sounds are all stored as memories. Our 5 senses are constantly interacting with the environment, receiving an enormous amount of information every second. Yet we remember only a small portion, mainly what's important. A region in the brain called the limbic system, particularly areas like the amygdala and hippocampus, helps decide what to remember and what to forget. Memories are first stored temporarily as short-term memory. If they're considered important, they're later strengthened and stored as long-term memory. How is memory processed? The formation of memory as synaptic connections begins even in the mother's womb. For example, a baby can recognize and remember the mother's voice. Interesting, right? As explained earlier, memory is a pattern of synapses. When we see a dog for the first time, the brain forms a blueprint of that dog. A specific group of neurons fire together in a pattern. These connecting synapses are like our muscles. The more we use them, the stronger they become. You can also imagine them as grasslands. If you keep walking on the same trail every day, the path becomes clearer. Similarly, when you see the dog again, the same set of neurons fire, strengthening that pathway. With repeated use, these synapses improve functionally. The number of receptors on neurons increases, and more neurotransmitter vesicles are produced. Neurotransmitters also act like growth signals, promoting physical strengthening of the connections between neurons. In this way, new connections form for every object you see, every sound you hear, and every experience you have. Now the question is, in which part of the brain does this actually happen? There's a region in our brain that looks like a seahorse. It's called the hippocampus. The hippocampus stores short-term memories, while the cortex, the outer layer of the brain, stores long-term memories. Let's take an example. Suppose you and your younger brother went to a movie. Afterward, he asked you to explain it because he didn't understand. You simplify it, remove unnecessary details, and retell the story from your memory, and he learns it from you. In this analogy, the hippocampus is like you, and the cortex is like your brother. The hippocampus observes and registers experiences as short-term memory. When you sleep, it replays the important information and signals the cortex to reproduce the same pattern, helping to store it permanently. That's why sleep is so important for forming stable memory connections. In this way, short-term memories in the hippocampus are converted into long-term memories in the cortex. But that's not all. There are different types of memories, and like explicit and implicit memory, which are stored in different regions of the brain, such as the basal ganglia and even parts of the spinal cord. To fit all this massive amount of information, the brain's cortex folds upon itself. These folds are called gyri. That's all for today, guys. If you want me to explain the different types of memory, comment below. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.